It began with rain, soft, uncertain, like a memory trying to find its way back. Tiny beads gathered on the edges of old window panes, trailing down in crooked lines that glowed against the gray afternoon. The house, tucked behind a grove of leaning pines, breathed its first waking breath in years. Inside, the rooms were dim but not cold. The kind of dim that feels like hush, like someone just stepped out and might return at any moment. Thomas paused in the entryway, umbrella dripping at his feet. The scent hit him slowly, dust and lavender, with a faint edge of mothballs and paper. It was the same, not similar, the same, as if the house had been holding its breath since his last visit, waiting only for him to return and exhale. He set his bag down and walked forward gently, not out of fear but out of reverence. The air felt heavy, not oppressive, but full. He had not seen this house in over 20 years, and yet each step felt familiar. Thomas's fingers brushed the edge of the carved banister, the one with the little nick he'd made when he was 7 and trying to slide down with socks on. The wood still knew him. He didn't speak. There was no need. The house seemed to recognize silence better than speech. It wasn't haunted. That was too dramatic a word, and Thomas didn't believe in hauntings anyway. But something about the house felt attentive, like an old dog lifting its head when the key turns in the lock, not restless, only remembering. He made a quiet circuit through the ground floor, his aunt's reading chair still draped in quilted fabric, a jar of buttons unmoved on the shelf, curtains the color of faded peaches. Each object carried the weight of waiting. In the corner of the kitchen, he found it a single cup and saucer, left on the edge of the shelf, not dusty, just pale, as if the color had bled away from age, not neglect. He picked it up without thinking, thumb tracing the small crack beneath the handle. His aunt's favorite. She never let anyone else use it. He set it gently back, feeling something shift inside him. A quiet ache, the kind that doesn't hurt, just lingers. By twilight, the house seemed to settle with him. Rain tapped softer now, rhythm steady on the roof like a lullaby. Thomas sat in the parlor, arms resting on a blanket older than he was. Shadows spilled lazily across the walls, slow and unbothered. He hadn't meant to stay this long. He was only here to sort through things. But the stillness, it made him stay. It came just after night fell. A knock, not sharp, not startling, just there. He sat up, heart thumping gently, unsure if he'd imagined it. Again, knock, pause, knock, pause, knock, from the wall behind the old bookcase. Not rats, not pipes. It had intention. He stood, not afraid, only curious. Thomas didn't move closer. He only listened. There was something in the rhythm, slow, deliberate, that scratched at the edge of his mind. He closed his eyes. A hallway, a girl humming, a tiny door drawn in crayon behind the curtain. A knock, just like this, and the sound of someone laughing quietly behind it. He opened his eyes again. The knock was gone, but something inside him had awakened, not in fear but in memory. Something, or someone, wanted to be remembered. The morning arrived wrapped in grey silk. A hush stretched across Larkspur Lane, stitched only by the slow rhythm of Thomas's footsteps on the gravel path. The house stood as it always had, shoulders slumped and dreaming. Its front porch bowed like it had been listening too long. He paused at the threshold, fingers grazing the frame where porch bells used to hang. They were gone now, but in the stillness he could almost hear them, a bright tinkling laughter that once greeted the wind. He closed his eyes and remembered, summer light through the screen door, lemonade in mason jars, and his aunt's voice humming something that never had words. Inside, the scent greeted him first, not dust as he expected, but something softer, faint rose soap, the kind his aunt used, thick, carved and wrapped in lace. It clung to the air like the memory of her hand on his cheek. The parlor hadn't changed. The fabric on the chairs was sun-bleached and worn thin, but still carried warmth, like a shawl laid across the shoulders of an old friend. The light filtered through shears that rippled faintly, catching dust like golden snow. Thomas ran a hand along the edge of the sideboard, eyes pausing on a shallow dish with buttons, pennies and safety pins, things she'd kept not for use, but for remembrance. He could still hear her voice, whimsical and certain, from years ago, curled into twilight. This house, she'd said, was stitched with secrets, every corner sewn by something unseen. He'd been 10 then, curled up beside her with a book too heavy for his lap. She told stories about the woman in the mirror who winked when no one looked, and the cellar door that once led to a garden that didn't belong to this world. He hadn't believed her, not really, but standing there now, older and carrying his own unravelings, Thomas wondered if the stories had simply been quiet truths wrapped in softer words. Thomas had come here alone. The papers for the house were in his coat. The divorce papers had been filed only weeks earlier. It hadn't ended badly, just quietly. Two people slipping past each other in the night, folding their lives into neat halves. He hadn't told anyone where he was going. He didn't need to. This house, with its faded wallpaper and creaking boards, was the only place that had ever made space for silence. And Thomas lately had become mostly silence. The attic was just as he remembered. Low-ceiling wooden beams laced with cobwebs, and boxes that hadn't been opened in decades. The light from the small round window spilled like warm milk across the floor. He opened a box and found books, water-damaged, some broken at the spine, but still intact. Their pages smelled of things time forgot: cedar, smoke, candle wax, summer rain. Each one had its own memory, its own temperature. He sat for hours, repairing torn edges, smoothing wrinkled corners. He didn't rush. He moved like a man mending not just paper, but something beneath the skin. That evening, it returned. The knock. He had almost forgotten. It came softly, from behind the study wall, near the old shelf of encyclopedias. Knock. Pause. Knock. Thomas sat still, not alarmed, not even puzzled, just listening. The rhythm was gentle. It didn't demand attention. It invited it, like a child tapping to be let in, trusting you'd open the door. He didn't move toward it. Not yet. He only whispered, "Hello." No answer, just the ticking of the mantel clock and the rain tracing its long, slow path across the windows. The next morning, while clearing a small chest near the fireplace, he found it. A journal, navy blue leather, tied with pale ribbon, soft with years. His aunt's handwriting greeted him like a scent, looping, confident, but full of pauses. Inside were sketches of the house, the attic, the cellar, the garden as it once had been. Tucked between pages were dried leaves, brittle and brown, and one single scrap of embroidered lace. He turned a page and stopped. A line underlined twice stood out in faded ink. "The child with the soft steps is still waiting." Thomas stared at the words. His hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but something else. Recognition, the kind you feel in dreams just before waking. That night, the knocking returned again. Soft, patient, familiar. But this time Thomas didn't whisper. He listened with his whole body, as if every breath he took was part of the house now, as if he had never really left. He sat in the hallway until the candle near him burned low, and when the sound faded, he closed his eyes and whispered the last line from the journal aloud. Still waiting, something shifted in the silence, a warmth in the wall, a sigh like a page turning. He smiled gently. The house wasn't lonely. It had simply been waiting for someone who could still hear. It returned, that same slow knocking. 3 taps, a pause, then 3 more. Not at the door, not beneath the floorboards, from the wall. Thomas stood in the hallway, a candle cupped gently in both hands, his breath quiet as moth wings. Across from him the wallpaper, roses and bluebirds faded with time, fluttered as if stirred by breath. There was no breeze, only the hush of the house, and that strange internal knock. But he felt it in his ribs, like something that used to know his name. He approached softly, not with fear but reverence. The wallpaper, browned at the edges and curled like dried petals, lifted easily at his touch, as though waiting. The paste beneath had long surrendered. Behind it the plaster bulged, not cracked but bowed, as if something once exhaled from within and left the memory of its shape behind. He leaned in. There, a seam, not a door, Not quite, but not natural either. The paint's texture shifted subtly, like skin healed over an old scar. Too deliberate to be time's accident, too hidden for anyone not looking with the quiet eyes of grief. Thomas pressed his ear to it. Stillness. Then again, 3 knocks. A memory returned. Thunder outside. The stormy hush of the house at night. His aunt's voice, soft, careful, as they sat beneath a woolen blanket. "The walls remember what we forget," she'd said, stroking his hair. He'd thought it a comfort, a story, but maybe it had been a warning, or a truth too gentle for the world to hear out loud. He climbed the narrow attic stairs and opened the cedar trunk with the brass clasp. Inside, yellowed blueprints curled like sleeping things. He rolled one open. The hallway there, his room there, but behind the wall, a blank, a quiet, deliberate absence, as if the house itself had chosen not to confess that part. He returned with a brush and a small putty knife, tools not to demolish, but to listen. As he scraped the plaster gently, a hush seemed to bloom around him. Dust lifted in delicate spirals, falling like ash from the sky of some forgotten place. Then, a breath, cool and dry, air from beyond. The wall wasn't solid. It had depth, a hollow waiting quietly. He opened a space wide enough to peer through. Candle light licked the air. Inside, a small tin horse with one wheel, a porcelain doll with a cracked face and one eye, staring skyward, a cone tangled with golden hair. Glass jars lined a shelf, inside them dried violets, their petals still blue. It wasn't a room, it was a hush, a pause, a secret kept too long. He reached in and lifted a folded woolen blanket, soft, faded, blue. It smelled like lavender soap, the same kind his aunt had kept in lace-lined drawers, that scent of worn pages and summer rain. He held it, and it held him, warmth not from fire, but from remembrance. Then, a hum, not loud, not immediate, a child's melody, the kind sung absently while arranging stones or drawing on windows with breath. No words, just tone, soft, rising like mist over a lake. It didn't scare him, it quieted him. It sounded like the past, asking not to be forgotten. He didn't know what to do, or who would believe him. He called the police. 2 officers arrived before dusk. He led them silently to the wall, showed them the cone, the toys, the hollow space. They crouched, listened. Then the knock came again, slow, calm, 3 times. The younger one stepped back. The older officer turned pale, lips tight. "We're not going in there," he whispered. "This isn't for us." They left. No notes, no explanation. They didn't return. Thomas stood by the wall, alone. The hum had gone still, but something lingered. Not a ghost, not quite, a presence, like memory wrapped in quiet cloth. He sat cross-legged beside the hollow. The candle flickered low, the blanket folded on his lap. He held the cone in his hand. With quiet breath, he touched the edge of the hidden doorway, fingertips to wood worn smooth with time. He did not speak, but he thought it. "I remember you," and in that moment, the house, ancient, hollow, breathing softly around him, seemed to sigh, as though someone, or something, had been waiting for that all along. The flame barely flickered as Thomas leaned forward on his hands and knees, candle balanced before him like a prayer. The passage, narrow, timbered with beams pressed close, exhaled no dust, no scent, not even a breath of air. It was as if it had held its breath for years, waiting for someone who would move slowly enough, softly enough, to be let in. His fingers brushed the floor, cold, smooth, and beneath that coldness, the quietest welcome. The drawings came first, simple sketches in crayon and charcoal. A bird with large eyes, a girl in braids holding a cat, stars in crooked constellations, and beneath them, names. Clara, Daisy, Mother, Safe. Small hands had drawn these things, carefully, hopefully. There were tally marks too, not desperate, but neat, counted by weeks, then months. The silence began to hum with a presence. Along the floor, toys had been tucked into corners, a spinning top, a ribbon-tied spoon, a faded stuffed rabbit missing one ear, a string of buttons, looped like a necklace, tiny shoes with blue laces, too small for running, but well loved by someone who tried, folded pages, some blank, some filled with half-formed letters, lined the baseboard like offerings in a chapel. Thomas moved slowly, reverently, heart thudding gently like an echo through velvet. At the end of the crawl space, where light should have ended, a thin shaft spilled through a slat in the ceiling. In its glow stood a door, no knob, no latch, just wood, child-sized and curved at the top, like a toy theater stage, soft as a secret kept. He reached out. The door opened inward, without a sound. Blankets had been folded with care across the cot in the corner. Pressed wildflowers filled glass jars along the shelf. Poppies, daisies, even violets, their color gently faded but not gone. The room smelled of old pages, soap, and something green, like spring caught between the floorboards. No webs, no rot, nothing broken, only stillness, the kind that settles in places held gently by time, not forgotten but protected. He found it beneath a painted wooden box, a journal, soft bound with ribbon, pages curled but intact. When he opened it, the ink was delicate, flowing, steady, words shaped with care and an odd sort of patience, as if written slowly, day by day, in the presence of silence. The handwriting belonged to a girl named Clara. She wrote of hiding, not with fear, but with purpose. Her mother's soft hands, her aunt's low songs, the tap-tap of heels that meant food was coming. She spoke of seasons slipping past the slatted vents. I knew it was spring by the birds again. I knew it was Christmas by the cinnamon she'd leave in the cloth. And of Thomas's aunt, how she found her one day and didn't scream, didn't call anyone, just brought soup and listened. She taught me how to sew. She let me stay until I could vanish properly. Thomas turned the pages slowly, pausing at each drawing. A cat curled in a window, a braid being undone. Then, near the end, a single line in bold ink. If you found this, it means you were quiet enough to hear me. He held the book to his chest, his eyes closed, and for a long time, the room said nothing and everything. He sat in the center of it, cross-legged on the warm wooden floor. The candle pooled golden light onto the walls, catching every gentle curve and memory. He did not feel fear, only reverence. This room had not held sorrow. It had held hope and patience, and the echo of two women, one hidden, one healing, who made something sacred from silence. His aunt could have told him, but she didn't, because it wasn't a story made for retelling. It was one meant to be found, when the time was right, by someone who needed it, someone who would listen. He wasn't alone here, not in this story, not in this house. He stood once more. The candle wavered as he passed through the narrow hall, past the drawings and ribbons, the prayers etched in crayon. The flame kissed each object with light. Not goodbye, but thank you. In the hush, he heard a sound, a soft sigh, as if from beneath the floor or behind the walls. But it was not the knock, not anymore. It was a sigh of something at rest. He replaced the panel with care, smoothed the wallpaper back into place, and when he looked one last time, the hallway seemed warmer, lighter, as though someone had drawn back the curtain on a long dream, and the dream was ending kindly. No more knocking, no more searching, only the sound of rain outside, gentle cleansing, and the silence of a house that no longer needed to speak. Thomas didn't seal the passage with plaster or nails. He didn't erase the memory behind the wall. Instead, he chose a frame, simple oak, hand-sanded, and inside it, a small drawing, Clara's drawing, of a candle glowing in a high window. He hung it over the panel where the child-sized door once waited, not to hide it, but to honor it. And when the light from the nearby lamp struck it just so, it truly looked like a window, like someone inside might be watching or waving. The air changed, not all at once, but gently, like the way autumn slides into winter. The creaks in the floorboards no longer sounded startled. The windows let in more light than they used to, and at night when Thomas walked from room to room, the house no longer held its breath. It exhaled with him, soft and slow, together. The parlor became a quieter place, not empty, but open. Thomas lit the hearth most nights and read aloud from Clara's journal, not performatively, not to summon anything, just because the words felt better when they filled the room. He read as though she still might be listening, and maybe she was. He left the study door open. Always, some nights as the wind tickled ivy along the windows he would hear it. A soft hum, not quite a tune. Other times a knock, just once, never twice, and never startling. It was like the sigh of old beams or the shuffle of a hand against wood, like a memory settling back where it belonged. The kind of sound that makes you smile in the dark, without knowing why. Word drifted, as it always does in small towns. There was talk in the bakery, the flower shop, the post office, not of ghosts, not of fear, just wonder. They said the old house on Larkspur Lane had come alive, that it held something, someone kind, that it glowed at night, even without candles. Some said it was the wind, others said blessing. No one tried to explain. One bright afternoon, a girl came to the house with her grandmother. She wandered off while the adults spoke about books and tea, and the long-lost aunt. Then in the hallway with the drawing, she stopped. She looked straight at the wall. "There's someone nice here," she said. Her voice was light, certain, as if she'd met Clara already. Thomas knelt beside her, his hands soft on his knees. He didn't ask how she knew. He didn't ask what she saw. He only smiled, eyes glinting with something like gratitude. "Yes," he said, "she always was." He never reopened the passage, but he didn't need to. Clara had never truly left. She had become part of the house, its warmth, its hush, its rhythm. And some doors, the best ones, don't swing or creak or lock. They live inside you. The candle in the drawing never stopped glowing. The house never stopped listening, and Thomas never stopped reading aloud. Not to summon, but to remember. The garden had grown fuller since spring. Lavender spilled like soft ink along the borders, its pale blossoms nodding beneath the weight of moonlight. Thomas moved slowly among them, shears in hand, careful not to startle the hush. Each snip was like a heartbeat, measured, thoughtful, listening. A faint breeze carried the scent of earth and memory, something between soap and wildflower. He paused to breathe it in. Behind him the house glowed, not brightly, not all at once, but in that quiet embered way, like an oil lamp kept for comfort, not for show. One window glinted gold, as if someone had just turned a page inside. Another flickered, though no one moved. The house no longer waited. It welcomed, and it remembered. From the far corner, the study, there came a sound, soft, a knock, only once, as if checking in, as if saying, "Still here." Thomas didn't startle. He didn't rise from the flowerbed or hurry to see. He simply looked toward the open door, toward the hush where stories slept. The moonlight caught in his eyes as he turned, and then, gently, he smiled. It wasn't the smile of surprise, or of knowing something he could explain. It was the smile of someone who had been trusted, someone who had listened, even when no one spoke. Some stories do not rise in words. They bloom in stillness. They echo where we least expect them, between the walls, beneath the floors, inside the folds of lavender. They are the kind that wait for someone quiet enough to hear, soft enough to stay. The house had never stopped listening, and now neither had he.